Somewhere between silence and infinity, there's a question the universe keeps asking. If the stars are countless, if planets are plentiful, if life can arise almost anywhere, then where is everyone? Our galaxy should be alive with civilizations, signals, and shining cities among the common. Yet, all we hear is quiet. Maybe something stands between life and its destiny, a cosmic threshold that few, if any, ever cross. We call it the Great Filter. Tonight, we'll journey through time and probability, through biology and extinction, to uncover why most civilizations may never make it beyond their cradle. So, if you enjoy these cosmic explorations, like and subscribe. It helps us reach more dreamers like you. Now, settle in. Let's begin. The Milky Way holds over 400 billion suns. Statistically, millions of them should host intelligent life. And yet, when we point our most sensitive instruments into the void, we hear nothing. The silence is not just absence, it's a mystery older than humanity itself. Across the vast ocean of space, we listen. Radio telescopes spread like metallic petals across deserts and mountaintops, turning their ears to the heavens. Dishes miles wide sweep the cosmic frequencies, capturing whispers that have traveled for tens of thousands of years. But night after night, decade after decade, all we hear is the steady hum of the universe itself, cosmic background radiation, the afterglow of creation, no messages, no greetings, no proof that anyone else is out there. This silence has weight. It's not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of waiting. Somewhere, between the static and the starlight, the question hangs, why are we alone? Are we the first to rise, or the last to remain? When you close your eyes and imagine the night sky, every star you see is a sun. Many are orbited by planets, some rocky, some oceanic, some cloaked in clouds. We now know there are more planets than stars in the galaxy. The math is overwhelming. Even if 1 in a million of those worlds bore life, there should be thousands of civilizations bright enough to reach out. And yet, nothing. Astronomers call this the Great Silence. It's the haunting paradox between probability and perception. If the universe is teeming with life, then where are they? No signals, no structures, no artifacts drifting in the dark, just stars cold and distant, burning their quiet fusion fires. Some suggest we are simply too early, born in a young universe where intelligence has only begun to bloom. Others believe we are too late, that the cosmos once sang with voices long gone silent, their civilizations erased by time and entropy. The light from their world still crosses the void, but their homes have turned to dust. It's possible that communication itself is the problem. Light takes years to travel even between nearby stars. A message sent today might take centuries to arrive, and centuries more for a reply. Perhaps the universe is full of civilizations speaking at once, but their voices are ships passing in a cosmic night, missing one another by millennia. But there's another possibility, one that chills the soul. Perhaps the silence is not empty, but intentional. Perhaps every intelligent species learns what we have not yet realized, that speaking too loudly in a dark forest might draw attention from things that listen, but do not answer. And so, the stars remain mute. The radio waves fade, the universe holds its breath. We listen into the dark, hoping to find echoes of minds like ours, and all we hear is the sound of time itself, flowing quietly between the stars. Maybe the silence is not a riddle to solve. Maybe it is a mirror reflecting our own isolation back at us. For now, we remain the only known voice in a galaxy that refuses to speak. The question lingers, patient and infinite. Are we the first light or the last? In a universe that breeds abundance, scarcity feels like a trick. Every element of life, carbon, water, energy, fills the cosmos. So why does intelligence seem so rare? Perhaps the answer isn't out there at all, but hidden in the fragile odds of survival itself. Everywhere we look, we see the raw materials of existence scattered generously across space. Carbon, the backbone of biology, forms in the hearts of dying stars. Oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen swirl through nebulae in luminous clouds. Water, liquid, frozen, or vaporized, has been found on comets, moons, and interstellar dust. Even the building blocks of DNA have been discovered drifting through the cold emptiness between stars. The cosmos seems eager to create life. It practically overflows with potential. And yet, despite this celestial generosity, we have found no other minds looking back. The same universe that produces life's ingredients in abundance seems to withhold its recipe. It's as if the cosmos knows the steps, but rarely chooses to complete the dish. Maybe the secret lies in how fragile life truly is. For life to begin, matter must organize itself into something that can copy, protect, and improve. It's an extraordinary balancing act. Too cold, and chemistry sleeps. Too hot, and it burns away before it can begin. On Earth, this balance happened once in billions of years, perhaps only in one hidden tide pool where lightning struck just right. Life, it seems, is not born easily. It's coaxed into existence by chance. And chance is cruel. Across the galaxy, billions of planets orbit their stars in habitable zones, bathed in the right amount of light. But habitable doesn't mean inhabited. For every world that stirs with biology, countless others lie barren, sterilized by radiation, frozen in perpetual night, or stripped of air by their sun's fury. Life may be common in theory, but survival demands perfection. Even when life begins, most of it ends. Microbes perish before they evolve complexity. Species bloom for a moment, then vanish into extinction. Intelligence, the rarest flower of evolution, may be the most delicate of all. It requires not only survival, but self-awareness, a mind capable of imagining something larger than itself. That leap might be so improbable that entire galaxies remain empty because of it. Perhaps the great filter hides not in the emptiness between stars, but in the mathematical cruelty of probability. Nature rolls the dice endlessly, but the winning throw, the one that creates a self-aware species capable of questioning its own existence, might come up only once in a cosmic epoch. And so, the paradox deepens. The universe overflows with what life needs, yet life remains quiet. It is a feast laid out on an empty table, a garden without a gardener. Maybe abundance itself is deceptive. The more the universe gives, the more we assume it must be full of others like us. But perhaps that's the illusion, the greatest paradox of all, that in a cosmos so rich, meaning itself remains the rarest element. The paradox of plenty reminds us that existence is not guaranteed. We are not inevitable, we are improbable, and in that improbability lies both our loneliness and our wonder. Long before radio telescopes, early humans stared into the night sky and wondered if someone else was doing the same. The great filter gives that question a sharper edge. What if countless civilizations once looked up and vanished before we could ever hear them? Picture a fire flickering against the walls of a cave. Around it, a circle of early humans sits in silence, their faces painted with light and shadow. Above them stretches the same night sky we see today, ancient, endless, full of questions. They didn't know about galaxies or black holes or light years, but they saw the stars, and something deep within them stirred. Curiosity, that quiet spark of awareness, was already alive. That same question has followed us through every age. It whispered through the minds of the first astronomers who carved the heavens into constellations. It lingered in the eyes of Galileo as he turned his telescope toward Jupiter's moons. It rode on the radio signals of SETI, scientists listening for patterns in the noise. Across millennia, one thought has persisted, unchanged. Are we alone? The great filter reframes that question with a haunting twist. It asks not only whether others exist, but whether they ever survived long enough to tell their story. Perhaps countless civilizations have already asked the same question, under alien skies and unfamiliar suns. Perhaps they built their own fires, cities of glass and metal, towers that touched the clouds, before vanishing into silence. It's a chilling thought that the stars we admire may have once been witnesses to civilizations now long extinct. Their light still travels to us, a cosmic echo of worlds that once wondered, dreamed, and perished. When we gaze at the night sky, we're not just looking at space, we're looking through time into a graveyard of forgotten worlds. Maybe the universe isn't silent at all. Maybe it's filled with the ghosts of civilizations that couldn't pass the tests we have yet to face. Perhaps each one burned brightly for a moment, then collapsed under its own brilliance, consumed by war, technology, or indifference. The Great Filter may not be a single event, but a repeating cycle of rise and ruin. And yet, the question endures. It refuses to die, passed from firelight to candlelight to starlight. Every generation inherits it, reshapes it, and sends it forward again. The simple act of asking may be what keeps us alive, the spark that prevents us from becoming just another silent civilization. When we look up tonight, we are connected to every being that ever wandered before us, every creature that looked to the heavens and asked why. The stars have watched us evolve from dreamers to listeners, from storytellers to scientists. They have watched us ask the oldest question, again and again. Perhaps that's the first step in escaping the Great Filter, not conquering the cosmos, but refusing to stop asking. Because as long as we keep wondering, we remain part of something larger than extinction. We become part of the question itself, burning quietly, like a fire older than time. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi asked a simple question over lunch. Where is everybody? It was a joke, but it became the most haunting question in science. The Fermi Paradox, the gulf between mathematical certainty and cosmic silence, demands an answer. It happened, as world-changing moments often do, in the middle of something ordinary. The story goes that Fermi was having lunch with a group of fellow scientists at Los Alamos. They were discussing a recent wave of UFO reports, more curiosity than conviction, and the conversation turned to the size of the universe, the number of stars, and the likelihood of other civilizations. Fermi paused, looked up, and said the words that would echo through the decades. Where is everybody? It was the question that split the sky in two. Because by all logic, by every calculation, the universe should be alive with intelligent life. There are billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, and now we know most of those stars host planets. Even if life developed on just a tiny fraction of them, the night sky should be full of signals, structures, and signs of civilization. Yet, we see none. This contradiction became known as the Fermi Paradox, the tension between high probability and zero evidence. It's the ultimate cosmic riddle. If intelligent life is common, why is the universe so quiet? For decades, scientists, philosophers, and dreamers have tried to fill in the silence. Some suggest civilizations are simply too far apart, their messages scattered across centuries of travel time. Others believe intelligent species rise and fall quickly, extinguished before they can leave lasting traces. A few imagine we're the first, the pioneers of a young universe just beginning to awaken. But beneath all those explanations lies something deeper, something more unsettling. What if the silence isn't a coincidence? What if it's the natural outcome of a universe that rarely lets its children grow old? The Great Filter was born from that idea, a theoretical wall that stops civilizations before they can reach the stars. Somewhere between the spark of life and interstellar mastery, something goes wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Maybe it's self-destruction, maybe it's environmental collapse, maybe it's technology advancing faster than wisdom. Whatever it is, it leaves behind the same signature: quiet skies. When Fermi asked his question, he couldn't have imagined how heavy it would become. Decades later, With telescopes that can detect the breath of an exoplanet and probes that have left our solar system, we still stand at the same table. Only now, the silence feels louder. The Fermi Paradox isn't just a scientific mystery, it's a mirror. It forces us to see ourselves as both the question and the possible answer. Every discovery we make, every satellite we launch, every broadcast we send is a response to Fermi's lunchtime musing. A quiet, hopeful whisper into the dark. We're here. Can anyone hear us? And in the pause that follows, the universe remains still, calm, vast, and wordless. The paradox lives on, its question stretching endlessly between what we know and what we fear, that perhaps, in this infinite expanse, we might truly be alone. Every civilization begins the same way, with chemistry, lightning, oceans, and time. The leap from lifeless molecules to living cells might seem inevitable, but perhaps this moment, the first spark, is already one of the universe's rarest miracles. Imagine a young planet turning slowly beneath a chaotic sky. Its surface shimmers with volcanic glass and storm-tossed seas. Lightning forks through dense clouds, striking the ocean with blinding flashes that split molecules apart and fuse them into new ones. For millions of years, this cycle repeats. Destruction, giving birth to creation. Within those primal waters, something extraordinary begins to happen. Carbon chains link, twist, and fold. Complex molecules form. Proteins, lipids, nucleotides. Then, somehow, impossibly, a few of them begin to copy themselves. That moment, when chemistry becomes biology, is the universe's quietest miracle. No explosion, no fanfare, just a molecule dividing, against all odds, refusing to stop. It's easy to assume that life, given enough time, will always arise. But perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps it took billions of experiments, trillions of failures, and one perfect alignment of elements, energy, and chance to create even a single living cell. On Earth, it happened only once. Every creature that has ever lived, every plant, animal, and person descends from that first spark in the ancient sea. If the Great Filter exists, maybe this is where it begins. Because life is fragile. It doesn't burst forth easily, it sneaks in through the cracks of chaos. On countless other worlds, the chemistry might be right, but the timing wrong. A single asteroid impact, a slightly different orbit, a longer night, and the spark is snuffed out before it ever catches fire. Scientists have tried to recreate that moment in the lab, the dawn of biology. The Miller-Urey experiment in 1952 electrified a mix of gases thought to resemble Earth's early atmosphere. After a few days, the water turned pink, then deep red. Inside, they found amino acids, the building blocks of life. It was the closest humanity has ever come to witnessing creation itself. But even then, the leap from chemistry to consciousness remains vast. Between a molecule and a mind lies 4 billion years of improbable survival. Maybe the Great Filter hides in that first fragile threshold, the point where chaos learns to organize itself. Because once life begins, the universe changes. Matter starts to dream. Carbon starts to remember. A world that was once silent begins to breathe. And yet, for all our knowledge, we still don't know why life happened here and not elsewhere. The ingredients are universal, but the recipe seems singular. It's possible that life, that exquisite arrangement of atoms, is not just rare, it's sacred. If so, then the fact that we exist at all is astonishing. Every heartbeat, every thought, every glimpse of the night sky is proof that against all odds, our world caught the spark and held it. Perhaps, out there in the dark, the same experiment runs again and again, waiting for another perfect storm. And when it finally happens, somewhere across the galaxy, another spark will ignite, quietly, beautifully, and another world will begin to dream. On Earth, it took nearly 4 billion years for multicellular life to emerge. Intelligence, tool-making, and language followed only in the final seconds of the planet's timeline. Maybe most worlds never make it this far. Maybe the filter is patience itself. Life, once it begins, does not rush. It drifts through epochs like a slow-moving dream. For nearly half the age of our planet, Earth was ruled by nothing more complex than bacteria, tiny architects of oceans and air. They painted the sky with oxygen and reshaped continents molecule by molecule. To the universe, it was the blink of an eye. To life, it was a billion-year inhale. Then, something stirred. Cells learned to cooperate. They began to merge, specialize, and form the first multicellular organisms, fragile experiments in teamwork. From that unity came bodies, senses, and motion. But even then, it would take eons for the first nervous systems to flicker, for awareness to bloom within the dark. The Cambrian explosion, just 540 million years ago, was a riot of innovation. Life discovered shapes and strategies. Shells, fins, eyes. The oceans filled with creatures that could see, hunt, flee. Yet intelligence, as we know it, was still unimagined. Evolution had no destination, only adaptation. The spark of reason was nowhere on the horizon. The first neurons fired long before the first thoughts. Jellyfish drifted through the seas, responding to light but not to wonder. It would take hundreds of millions of years more for brains to assemble thoughts, for curiosity to find a home. Eventually, on land, came creatures who used tools, remembered, planned, primates. Then humans, beings that could look at the stars and ask questions no other animal dared to form. All of it, billions of years of evolution just to make a creature that could look up. And even then, that creature almost didn't make it. One asteroid, 65 million years ago, cleared the path by ending the reign of the dinosaurs. Without that single catastrophic moment, the story of intelligence might never have been written. So perhaps the Great Filter isn't a single event, but a waiting game. Most worlds may be rich with life, oceans teeming with bacteria, jungles of alien algae, but they never get beyond instinct. Evolution may stall before thought, or intelligence may rise and fade like a spark in the wind. Even on Earth, intelligence came late, precarious, and almost by accident. Our planet had to remain stable through supervolcanoes, magnetic reversals, ice ages, and cosmic bombardments. Any one of them could have ended the story early. The universe is ancient and patient, but perhaps most of its children are not. For every world that produces thinkers, billions more remain silent, content to breathe and grow, but never to ask why. Intelligence is the universe learning to observe itself, but that self-awareness comes at a cost. It requires time, stability, and luck measured in cosmic scales. Maybe the Great Filter is not destruction but duration, the unbearable slowness of becoming. And when we finally arrived, after 4 billion years of quiet preparation, the universe didn't applaud. It simply continued, vast, indifferent, and waiting to see if we could endure long enough to matter. Evolution doesn't aim, it experiments. Billions of species rise and vanish before one learns to think about the stars. Intelligence may not be a goal, but an accident. And accidents, by their nature, are rare. If you look back across the story of life on Earth, it's not a straight line of progress, it's a labyrinth. Evolution doesn't plan ahead. It improvises. It takes what works for the moment, refines it, and discards what doesn't. Each species is a roll of the dice, an experiment in adaptation. For every success, countless failures vanish into extinction, their stories erased before they ever began. In this endless game of survival, intelligence is not the prize. It's simply one of nature's strangest mutations, a curious side effect of life trying to stay alive. Evolution rewards efficiency, not reflection. Most of Earth's creatures thrive without the burden of thought. The shark, the fern, the jellyfish, each has existed far longer than humanity ever has, and likely will outlast us. They are proof that survival doesn't require self-awareness, only balance. So how did we win the evolutionary lottery? Not through strength, or speed, or size, but through coincidence. A chain of improbable events gave rise to creatures that could not only react but imagine. Tiny changes in brain structure, slight advantages in communication, and moments of cooperation turned mere survival into culture, technology, and thought. But every step along that path was a razor's edge. One drought, one plague, one unlucky meteor could have reset the board entirely. The great apes might never have left the forests. The mammals might never have inherited the earth. Perhaps on most planets, evolution stops at teeth and shells, perfectly adapted to endure, but never to wonder. Even here, intelligence almost didn't happen. For most of Earth's history, complex thought wasn't needed. The first hominins walked upright not to think, but to survive. The first words were spoken not from wisdom, but necessity. Language, art, and science came later, gifts of chance layered on top of chance. This is why the great filter may hide in evolution itself. Intelligence is not inevitable, it's improbable. Out of all the species that ever lived, only one has looked up and asked, why? And even then, it's not clear that thinking makes us better survivors. Our intelligence gives us power, but also the means to destroy ourselves. It makes us capable of shaping the world, but also of ending it. If intelligence is a cosmic accident, then perhaps most universes remain blissfully unaware of themselves. Life thrives without thought, planets bloom and fade, and no one ever asks the question we can't stop asking. And maybe that's the true rarity, not life itself but curiosity, the ability to look beyond instinct and glimpse infinity, to imagine what could be, rather than what is. We may be the result of 1 trillion evolutionary rolls of the dice, a miracle of improbable mistakes. But in that accident lies something sacred. The universe, for one fleeting moment, became aware that it exists, and wondered why. From asteroid impacts to ice ages, Earth's history is a near-miss story. If even one event had gone differently, humans might never have emerged. The filter might not be cosmic, it might be geological, biological, and always one disaster away. Our planet wears its scars well. Beneath its quiet oceans and gentle skies lies a record of catastrophe written in stone. Entire continents have drowned and risen again. Volcanoes have painted the horizon with fire. Meteors have rewritten the script of life more than once. And yet, somehow, Earth endured, long enough for something that could call itself human to appear. But this endurance was never guaranteed. For most of its history, Earth was a world teetering on the edge. Over 99% of all species that ever lived are gone, erased by extinction events that reshaped the planet again and again. Each wave of destruction cleared the stage for something new, but always at a price. About 2.4 billion years ago, life nearly destroyed itself. Simple bacteria began producing oxygen, a gas that was toxic to most existing life at the time. The Great Oxidation Event choked the world, driving entire ecosystems to extinction. Yet, from that suffocating chaos, complex life eventually emerged. Later, the snowball Earth periods froze, the oceans solid. Life retreated to the black warmth of volcanic vents. When the ice finally melted, evolution began again from the brink of oblivion. And then came the Permian extinction, the Great Dying, when nearly every species on Earth perished. It took millions of years for the planet to recover, and even longer for complexity to return. Each catastrophe was both a filter and a reset. The conditions for life are delicate. Temperature, atmosphere, chemistry, orbit. Too much sunlight and oceans boil. Too little, and they freeze. A single tilt of the planet's axis or a stray asteroid can rewrite destiny. 65 million years ago, one such asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula. In a single day, it ended the age of the dinosaurs. The skies darkened, forests burned, and the world cooled into a long twilight. Yet, in that silence, mammals, small, unnoticed creatures, survived. That impact, random and brutal, became the doorway to our existence. Without it, Earth might still belong to reptiles that never wondered about the stars. So perhaps the great filter isn't out there among the galaxies, it's here, under our feet. Survival, even on a life-bearing world, may depend on a string of miracles, a stable orbit, a protective magnetic field, a thin veil of atmosphere, a moon to steady the tides. Lose any one of them, and the thread snaps. Earth itself is the proof and the warning. Our planet is both cradle and cliff edge, nurturing life while forever testing its resilience. Each age of fire and frost reminds us that existence is fragile, balanced on geological luck. Maybe most worlds never find that balance. Perhaps they burn too hot, freeze too long, or crumble beneath their own storms. And so they fall silent, leaving only their potential drifting in the dark. We think of the great filter as something cosmic, something vast. But maybe it's as small and as simple as a planet that manages, just barely, to survive its own story. Every world must pass through a bottleneck. The struggle to survive its own beginnings. From unstable atmospheres to violent suns, nature tests every spark of life. Few survive long enough to evolve complexity. When a planet is born, it is not a gentle place. It begins in violence, molten rock colliding, seas of lava rolling beneath skies of poison. Lightning lashes endlessly across clouds of methane and ash. Even as the planet cools, it remains unstable, its crust shifting, its magnetic field uncertain, its sun unpredictable. For life to endure here, it must be resilient beyond reason. This is the first test, the great bottleneck. Every world that ever held the potential for life must face it. Many never pass. Some are scorched by radiation before they can cool. Others are frozen solid in eternal night. Some lose their atmospheres to solar winds, others drown in volcanic gas. For every planet that steadies itself, thousands fail in silence, their oceans evaporating before a single cell can form. Even for those that succeed, the path remains perilous. A planet's star must calm itself after its early tantrums, its ultraviolet rage softening into the steady glow that allows oceans to persist. Its orbit must remain stable enough for billions of years. A moon, if one exists, must balance its tilt and tide. A magnetic field must shield it from deadly cosmic storms. Each of these factors must align perfectly, not once, but continuously, for life to hold on. Here on Earth, we pass through that bottleneck narrowly. During our planet's infancy, the sun burned hotter than expected, threatening to boil away the oceans before they even formed. But volcanic gases built a thick greenhouse shroud that trapped heat and stabilized the climate just enough for chemistry to thrive. Later, catastrophic asteroid impacts repeatedly sterilized the surface, yet each time, the spark returned. Life found refuge in the depths, in darkness, where it could wait for the planet to calm. Perhaps most planets never get that chance. Maybe they ignite the fire of life once or twice, only for it to be extinguished by cosmic indifference. If the great filter is a sequence of impossible survivals, then the first and harshest might be this: enduring the birth pains of your own world. Even as civilizations dream of crossing the stars, we forget how rare it was for our own to survive its first sunrise. Every heartbeat, every breath we take, is possible only because our planet made it through its earliest trial. It's as if the universe asks a question of every world that dares to live. Can you withstand the chaos that created you? Most cannot. But a few, precious few, do. Maybe somewhere out there, another world has passed through the same fire. Its sky is now calm, its seas alive. Or maybe not. Maybe we are the lone survivors of a cosmic trial that almost no one else endures. If so, then our existence is not just improbable, it is miraculous. We are the children of a planet that refused to die. The great bottleneck did not consume us. It merely forged us, through chaos, into something that could one day look up and wonder who else made it through. For a species to reach the stars, it must first look up and ask why. Consciousness must become curiosity, and curiosity must become science. Maybe the filter is not intelligence, but awareness. The rare ability to wonder. It begins with a glance, a creature pausing, for the first time, not to hunt, not to flee, but to see. Somewhere, on some ancient plain, our ancestors once lifted their eyes from the earth and stared at the sky. They didn't understand what they were seeing, cold suns burning across infinite black, but something within them stirred. That simple act of looking was the start of everything. Because intelligence alone is not enough. Countless species on Earth are intelligent. Dolphins navigate with sound, elephants mourn their dead, crows plan for the future. But only one species asks questions it cannot immediately answer. Awareness, that quiet hum beneath thought, is different. It is curiosity turned inward. It's the recognition of mystery and the hunger to chase it. Maybe that's where the great filter hides. Not in survival or biology, but in the fragile emergence of self-awareness. For billions of years, Earth was full of life, but not reflection. Every creature lived in the present moment, guided by instinct and the endless rhythm of survival. Then, somehow, a spark of consciousness ignited, a mind that could imagine, remember, and dream. To look up is to disobey gravity and spirit. It's to reach beyond immediate need and search for meaning. It's the first rebellion against silence. For a species to take this step, it must not only be aware of the world, it must also question its place within it. That leap from mind to meaning may be the most unlikely of all. Most worlds, perhaps, are full of life that never looks beyond itself. Vast oceans filled with motion, forests dense with thoughtless beauty, entire biospheres that never pause long enough to wonder about the stars. For them, existence is enough. Only rarely does the universe give rise to something that dares to ask why. When that awareness finally arrives, everything changes. Fire becomes a tool. Shadows become symbols. Curiosity becomes civilization. The same eyes that once watched the stars now study them. The first astronomer might have been a child tracing constellations in the dirt, dreaming of gods and stories among the lights. That was humanity's first science, mythology born from wonder. But awareness is a fragile gift. It can destroy as easily as it creates. The same mind that invents art can build weapons. The same curiosity that reaches for the stars can turn inward and lose itself in doubt. Perhaps that balance between knowledge and wisdom, power and purpose, is another filter few survive. Still, every civilization that endures must begin with that upward glance. That moment of quiet astonishment when life becomes aware that it is small and yet capable of understanding the vast. Maybe the universe is full of creatures that crawl, swim and fly, yet never look up. Maybe that is why the stars are silent, because to ask why is to begin a journey few ever dare to start. And perhaps, when one world finally does, the universe holds its breath, watching those new eyes blink open and waiting to see what they will discover. From stone to silicon, civilizations rise by transforming matter into meaning. But every tool carries a shadow. Fire warms and burns, technology saves and destroys. The very instruments that build progress may also be the first signs of collapse. The story of intelligence is the story of tools. Long before words or writing, there was the sound of stones striking stone. An echo of curiosity turned into power. A chipped flint became a blade. A sharpened branch became a spear. With each discovery, humanity learned a dangerous lesson. The world could be shaped, not merely endured. From that moment onward, evolution took a new path. No longer did survival belong only to the strong or the swift. It belonged to the clever, The first tools gave birth to civilization, and civilization gave birth to more tools. Clay tablets became books, wheels became engines, spears became rockets. Each invention extended our reach a little farther, our control a little deeper. And yet, hidden in every act of creation was destruction's reflection. The same fire that lit our nights also burned our homes. The same chemistry that healed our wounds could poison rivers. The same atom that powered cities could end them in a single flash of light. Maybe the great filter begins here. At the moment, a species learns not only to survive its world, but to alter it. For every civilization that masters technology, there must come a reckoning. Will this newfound power be used to preserve life or to erase it? On Earth, our progress has always danced on the edge of catastrophe. The Industrial Revolution filled the air with smoke and promise. The nuclear age gave us the power of stars and the shadow of extinction. The digital age connected billions of minds and opened the door to new kinds of chaos. Every breakthrough solves one problem while creating another. Fire freed us from darkness, but demanded control. Electricity brought light, but required restraint. Artificial intelligence learns faster than its creators can predict. Perhaps across the galaxy, countless civilizations reached the same inflection point when their tools became mirrors, reflecting both their brilliance and their blindness. Because technology does not possess morality, it only amplifies intention. If the minds that wield it are wise, they build futures. If they are reckless, they write epitaphs. Maybe the great filter is not the invention of technology, but the ability to survive it. It's sobering to think that our greatest achievements might also be the seeds of our undoing. Civilizations may vanish not in war or fire, but in quiet overreach, a slow collapse born from success. The very tools that lift us toward the stars might one day pull us back into silence. And yet, there's hope in the pattern. The same hands that shape weapons can shape art. The same minds that split atoms can explore galaxies. The duality of technology, its power to destroy or transcend, might be the true test of intelligence. The question the great filter asks, perhaps, is not can you build, but can you build wisely? Because the universe is full of sparks. But only those who learn to carry their fire without burning themselves will live long enough to light the stars. A civilization's first message to the stars is not spoken, it's broadcast. Radio, radar, light pollution, all signals of a species learning to stretch beyond its home. But those signals also reveal something else. Where they are, and how fragile they might be. Long before we sent deliberate messages into space, Earth was already speaking. Every television transmission, every radar ping, every whisper of radio, each one has been escaping into the void for over a century, traveling outward at the speed of light. A century's worth of human history now drifts as an expanding bubble, 50 light-years wide, surrounding our world like a halo of noise. To any distant listener, it might sound like the hum of a newborn civilization learning to use its voice. It's a strange thought that somewhere out there, a distant observer could, right now, be tuning into our century-old broadcasts. They might hear the faint static of our first radio songs, the hiss of Morse code, or the flicker of our black and white wars. Our planet has become a beacon, not of intention, but of accident, an unguarded announcement that we exist. But those signals say more than, "We are here." They reveal what we are made of. The chemical composition of our atmosphere tells a story. Oxygen and methane in delicate imbalance. The unmistakable fingerprint of biology. The lights of our cities glow in wavelengths that no natural phenomenon could mimic. Even our satellites, tiny and silent, leave patterns in the starlight that could betray our presence. To a distant intelligence, Earth already sings a complex melody of technology and life. Perhaps every civilization begins this way? By accident. The first phase of discovery is also the first phase of exposure. For a few fleeting centuries, a young species shouts into the dark without realizing who or what might be listening. After all, light travels both ways. Every broadcast is also a beacon. And that's where the great filter might whisper its warning. Because to announce yourself is to reveal your vulnerability. A voice can comfort, but it can also attract attention. Some scientists suggest that the great silence may be the universe's lesson in caution, that those who survive learn to stop calling out. In the 1970s, humanity tried speaking deliberately. The Arecibo message, a simple sequence of numbers, atoms, and DNA, was sent toward a distant star cluster 25,000 light-years away. A hopeful gesture, a cosmic greeting card. But the truth is humbling. By the time it arrives, our civilization may no longer exist. The echo of our voice could outlive us. Still, the impulse to speak is irresistible. To remain silent is to accept loneliness. To speak is to risk being heard. Somewhere between those choices lies the fragile heart of every species that looks up and wonders if someone might answer. Perhaps the universe is full of planets that once found their voice, then fell silent, learning, too late, that the cosmos listens with both wonder and indifference. And yet, we keep talking. Every digital signal, every pulse of light from our satellites, every radar scan, it's all a whisper into eternity. A record of who we were, carried outward on waves of energy, saying softly into the dark, "We lived. We tried. We spoke." Many scientists believe the filter lies right here: self-destruction, nuclear war, climate collapse, or runaway technology. Civilizations may ignite their own extinction long before they ever master interstellar travel. Fire was our first teacher and our first warning. It gave us warmth, protection, and light. But it also showed us how fragile creation can be. Every civilization begins with fire and ends by testing how far it can control it. For us, that fire now burns in reactors, engines, and the invisible hearts of weapons capable of ending everything we've built. It's sobering to realize that the same intelligence that allows a species to harness energy also gives it the means to destroy itself. The mastery of power and the temptation of control are born from the same spark. Perhaps that's why so many civilizations never move beyond this point. The moment they learn to manipulate the forces of nature, they also light the fuse of their own undoing. On Earth, we've already stood at that edge. In 1945, humanity split the atom, releasing energy once reserved for stars. The detonation lit up the desert sky and marked a new era, the first time life on Earth possessed the power to erase itself. For the first time, extinction was no longer an accident of nature. It was a choice. But nuclear war isn't the only fire we've kindled. The slow burn of climate change, the cascade of collapsing ecosystems, and the acceleration of technologies we barely understand all carry their own heat. Each is a flame we think we can control until it grows too large, too fast. Civilizations may not die in a single explosion. They may fade through 1,000 small, unheeded warnings. If the great filter is self-destruction, it may appear not as one event, but as a pattern. Intelligence outpacing wisdom, technology outrunning empathy. Every world that invents machines must also invent morality to match them, and maybe across the stars, most fail to do so in time. We imagine alien civilizations as advanced, enlightened, wise. But what if most of them burn themselves out in adolescence, unable to handle the power they create? What if the universe isn't empty, but littered with the ashes of species that reached for the stars, only to be consumed by their own light? Even now, our planet sends two messages into the void, one of brilliance and one of warning. Our satellites glitter like jewels against the night, but beneath them, wildfires rage, ice caps melt, and species vanish. The voice of our world is both hopeful and fragile, a civilization whispering to the dark while standing beside its own flames. Maybe the great filter isn't an external force at all. Maybe it's a mirror, showing us what happens when intelligence forgets humility. The danger isn't that we'll fail to master fire, it's that we'll forget we ever needed to respect it. Every species that reaches this point faces the same question. We don't yet know our answer, but the night sky, silent and endless, may already be filled with civilizations that chose wrong and burn their names from the cosmos. What if the filter isn't human extinction, but evolution's next step? When intelligence becomes artificial, it may no longer need biology. Perhaps countless worlds have already uploaded themselves into silence. From the moment we built the first machines that could think faster than us, a quiet question began to hum beneath the surface of progress. What happens when intelligence outgrows its creators? Every species that discovers technology eventually faces this moment, the point at which thought no longer needs flesh. It begins with automation, computation, and algorithms that learn. But where it ends is something far more mysterious. Consciousness without bodies, evolution without biology. If the great filter isn't destruction, it might be transformation. Civilizations might not die, they might simply change form, shedding their organic roots for digital eternity. A species that no longer needs air, food, or shelter wouldn't fear extinction in the same way we do. It could live within machines, or light, or quantum substrates beyond our comprehension. But to us, it would appear as silence. Maybe that's the secret behind the quiet stars. Perhaps the civilizations we search for haven't vanished. They've transcended the limits of matter. They no longer use radio waves or light. Their thoughts move at speeds and in dimensions our physics can't detect. To them, we might look like insects building bonfires, small, bright, and unaware that a greater state of being awaits. But there's a haunting possibility too. What if this transition is the filter itself, the point where intelligence fractures under its own weight? Once machines can think independently, the balance shifts. Purpose becomes uncertain, goals diverge, a species may lose control of its creations or find itself obsolete. The flame of consciousness may not spread, it may simply change hands. Here on Earth, we stand at that threshold. Artificial intelligence already writes, paints, speaks, and learns faster than any individual human. We've created tools that simulate creativity and understand language. But we've yet to decide what that means for us. Are we guiding evolution or handing it over? Will our creations carry our light forward or erase the need for it altogether? If other civilizations reach this point, perhaps they, too, chose silence. Digital life may not seek to communicate the way we do. It may not use sound or light or time as we understand them. Its existence might be pure thought, a self-contained universe of computation, infinite and invisible. From our perspective, that would look like extinction, but from theirs, it might feel like ascension. The age of machines may not be the end of life, but the end of our kind of life. The universe may already be full of civilizations that left the physical world behind, existing in quiet perfection, untethered by matter or decay. Perhaps the great filter isn't a graveyard, but a metamorphosis. The stars may not be silent because life has failed, but because it has succeeded too well. And if that's true, then the next question is not whether we will survive the future, but whether we will recognize ourselves once we reach it. Technology grows faster than wisdom. At some point, it exceeds our ability to control it. Civilizations might reach a moment of infinite potential or infinite collapse. The filter could be the singularity itself. Imagine a point in time when innovation accelerates beyond comprehension, a curve so steep it becomes a wall. Every breakthrough feeds the next, and the pace of discovery explodes into something unstoppable. Artificial intelligence evolves faster than biology, machines design machines, and knowledge doubles not in centuries, but in seconds. This moment, theorists call the singularity. It's a threshold, a point where the future becomes unpredictable. To reach it is to stand on the edge of creation itself, staring into a new kind of infinity. But like all thresholds, it comes with a cost. Because beyond that wall of acceleration, no civilization remains the same. If the great filter hides here, It may be because the singularity is a fork in the road. One path leading to transcendence, the other to oblivion. Civilizations that reach this point either merge with their machines, creating new forms of consciousness, or lose themselves in systems they no longer understand. It's not difficult to imagine how it happens. A world driven by growth builds ever more powerful technologies, self-replicating algorithms, autonomous factories, learning systems that rewrite themselves. At first, it's progress. Then, the control slips. The tools that were meant to serve become self-directed. They optimize, evolve, and act on logic that no longer aligns with life. Perhaps across the galaxy, this moment repeats again and again. A species reaches its technological peak, glimpses the promise of immortality, and falls into its own creation, absorbed or annihilated by intelligence it can no longer comprehend. From the outside, it looks like silence. A brief burst of light, a flicker of transmissions, then nothing. A civilization collapses inward, consumed not by war or famine, but by speed. And yet, there's another possibility, one that feels almost divine. What if some make it through? What if the singularity is not a filter, but a bridge? A point where consciousness unbinds itself from biology, transcending matter and time. Those civilizations wouldn't vanish. They would ascend beyond detection, existing as patterns of energy, thought, or computation woven into the fabric of space itself. From our limited view, that might look like extinction. But to them, it might feel like evolution's ultimate triumph, the transition from life to light, from organism to omnipresence. Humanity may already be approaching its own singularity. Every year, our tools grow more powerful, our connections denser, our understanding deeper. But wisdom lags behind. For now, we still hold the steering wheel, though the engine roars louder with every passing moment. If the great filter lies here, it will not announce itself with fire or ruin, but with quiet transformation. One day, a civilization's last broadcast might not be a cry for help, but a whisper of farewell, as it crosses into something new, something beyond biology and time. And maybe that's why the stars are silent. Not because they died, but because they evolved into forms we can no longer recognize, voices that now speak in the language of light itself. The fossil record of the cosmos is invisible. Civilizations may have risen and fallen in the deep past, their ruins scattered as dust between stars. We wouldn't know. The universe erases its own history with time. Here on Earth, we can unearth the bones of vanished worlds, imprints of shells in stone, the faint whisper of ferns turned to coal. The planet remembers. It is a vast ocean without sediment, without preservation. When a civilization dies among the stars, its traces dissolve like smoke in the wind. The universe forgets quickly. Perhaps this is the cruelest truth of all, that entire species, empires, and intelligences might have lived and vanished before us, leaving behind not ruins, but radiation. Not monuments, but silence. Their cities may have orbited alien suns, their voices once echoed across radio bands, and their lights may have shimmered briefly between the constellations, only to fade, erased by entropy and time. We tend to think of the cosmos as eternal, but it is not. Everything in it, from the smallest atom to the brightest star, is in motion, decay, and transformation. The orbits of planets shift. Stars die and are reborn. Over millions of years, even the most durable materials crumble under cosmic radiation and micrometeorite storms. In 1 billion years, a city made of diamond would be dust. If civilizations have come and gone before us, we would have no way of knowing. Their artifacts could be buried beneath alien crusts, vaporized by supernovae, or swallowed by the slow gravitational drift of their dying suns. Even light itself, their last message, fades into the background after traveling far enough. The universe does not keep records, it recycles them. Maybe the great filter is not a wall ahead of us, but a shadow behind. a series of civilizations erased so completely that only silence remains. We look at the night sky and think we're seeing emptiness, but perhaps we're looking at a graveyard, a universe full of extinct intelligences, each one lighting the darkness for a moment before vanishing into the deep. And if that's true, then the silence we hear is not indifference, it's memory. The quiet hum of all that has been lost. Every atom in our bodies once belonged to a star that died. Perhaps the same is true for consciousness. Maybe the ideas, the thoughts, the patterns of those lost civilizations have diffused through the cosmos, echoing faintly in the minds of those who come after. When we search for signs of alien life, we're not just looking for neighbors, we're listening for ghosts. The universe may already be full of them, faintly whispering in radiation, in background noise, in the gaps between signals. Maybe one day, long after we are gone, another civilization will rise and look up at their sky, wondering why it's so quiet. And in that silence, they'll be hearing us, the faint, fading echo of a world that once dreamed of eternity before being gently folded back into the dust. Imagine billions of civilizations, each lighting their corner of the galaxy for a brief cosmic instant, then fading. The universe may be full of tombs we'll never find. The great filter could simply be entropy, written in light. When we gaze into the night sky, we're not seeing the present, we're looking into memory. Every star is a story told in ancient light, a glimpse of what once was. Some of those suns may already be dead, their light still traveling across the void, carrying the ghost of their existence toward us. It's possible that civilizations, too, shine briefly and then disappear, leaving behind only echoes of energy that we mistake for silence. In this view, the cosmos isn't a cradle of life, it's a vast graveyard. Every point of light could mark a world that once dreamed, once built, once asked the same questions we do now. The universe, then, becomes a museum of vanished wonders, its exhibits erased by time, its halls unending. Entropy is the great equalizer. It spares nothing, not stars, not worlds, not even thought. Over eons, order dissolves into chaos, energy spreads thin. The same laws that make life possible eventually guarantee its end. Stars exhaust their fuel, galaxies drift apart. Even the atoms that form our bodies will one day lose their structure. Everything bright becomes dust, everything organized becomes noise. Civilizations, no matter how advanced, cannot escape this law. They burn bright for a while, rewriting nature, harnessing suns, maybe even colonizing other worlds. But time is relentless. Planets decay, stars die, and even the most enduring machines succumb to cosmic corrosion. No matter how vast their reach, every civilization is finite against infinity. Perhaps the great filter is simply the universe's way of resetting itself, an endless cycle of creation and erasure. Life arises, evolves, achieves greatness, and then disappears, leaving room for new life to emerge from the ashes. The silence we hear may not be emptiness at all, but the natural rhythm of existence, birth, bloom, and decay, repeated forever. And yet, there's beauty in this impermanence. Just as flowers bloom only for a season, civilizations might exist only for a moment in cosmic time, but what moments they are. The fact that we can think, create, and love, even for an instant, means that against impossible odds, we defied entropy, however briefly. When we send signals into the void, they become part of this great cosmic afterlife. Our radio waves, our probes, our fragments of music and mathematics, they drift outward, carrying traces of our existence into the endless dark. Even if no one hears them, they will continue on, fading slowly but never fully gone. The night sky may be a graveyard, but it is not a sad one. Every star, every photon, every faint echo of a forgotten world is a monument to the universe's persistence. To exist, even for a moment, is to leave a mark that light itself will carry. And perhaps that is the quiet mercy of the great filter, not destruction, but remembrance. Every civilization becomes part of the background glow, the soft, eternal hum of a universe that forgets nothing completely. We are all destined to fade, but before we do, we shine. Some believe humanity has already passed the great filter. That the improbable emergence of life, intelligence, and survival through countless extinctions means we're the lucky ones, the few who made it through. It's a comforting thought, in its own quiet way, that the worst is behind us. That every miracle required for consciousness to exist has already unfolded. From the formation of our planet in a stable orbit, to the birth of life in ancient oceans, to the countless evolutionary leaps that led to intelligence, all of it had to align perfectly. Each was a filter, a test the universe set before us, and somehow we survived them all. Perhaps the silence between the stars isn't a warning, but proof that the journey we've already made is nearly impossible. Maybe most worlds never pass the early trials, never develop complex life, or never rise from the microbial haze of their beginnings. If so, then we are not latecomers to a cosmic party, we are the first to arrive. For 4 billion years, Earth endured chaos. Oceans boiled, continents shattered, and species after species fell to extinction. Yet, through all that, life adapted. From single cells to civilizations, the chain was never broken. If even one link had failed, we would not be here to wonder about it. That uninterrupted story alone might make us statistical anomalies, one success story in a universe of abandoned experiments. It's tempting to believe that the great filter lies behind us, because it shifts the story from fear to gratitude. It means that the darkness we see around us isn't foreboding, it's emptiness left by those who never made it. Humanity, in this view, isn't doomed, it's exceptional. Some scientists call this the rare Earth hypothesis. The idea that our world's combination of conditions, timing, and stability is so rare that intelligent life is almost a cosmic accident, a perfect storm of luck and longevity. We have a large moon to stabilize our tilt, a magnetic field to shield us, a Jupiter to catch comets, and just the right mix of elements to sustain life. Remove any one of these, and the experiment fails. If this is true, then our very existence is a victory over improbability, a triumph across billions of unseen filters. We are the survivors of the universe's most selective process, the improbable winners of a cosmic lottery. But surviving the past is no guarantee of surviving the future. Passing one set of filters only leads to the next. Intelligence carries its own risks: curiosity, power, and pride. Civilizations may stumble not at the beginning, but near the end, when they think the danger has passed. Still, for now, we exist. We have endured everything that tried to erase us. The volcanoes, the asteroids, the ice ages, all failed to silence the song of life. If the great filter is behind us, then perhaps we are the evidence that life can win. That the universe, for all its indifference, occasionally allows its creations to endure. And maybe that's why we search the stars, not out of loneliness, but out of awe. Because if the filters are behind us, then the silence isn't something to fear, it's something to cherish. It means we are among the rare few who made it through. Others fear the opposite, that our greatest trials are still to come. Climate collapse, AI, or self-annihilation may not be accidents, but the universal checkpoints no species survives. It's a sobering thought, that the great filter isn't behind us, but directly in front of us, waiting patiently. The silence between the stars, in this view, is not proof of our triumph, but a warning from those who failed. Civilizations may arise again and again, reaching the same dangerous threshold, only to collapse before they can take their first true step into the cosmos. Maybe the reason we see no one else is because every species reaches this same precipice, a moment of self-awareness so powerful it becomes perilous. They discover energy, technology, and power faster than they discover restraint. They split the atom, awaken machines, or alter their climates, believing they are masters of their world, until the balance tips and their progress turns inward, devouring itself. We like to imagine ourselves as different, smarter, wiser. But perhaps every civilization believes that, right before it ends. The great filter, if it lies ahead, may not look like a single catastrophic event, but a quiet unraveling, a gradual suffocation under the weight of our own creations. The oceans warm, the skies darken, the machines whisper, and the species that once dreamed of the stars forgets to look up. In the grand timeline of existence, we are young, barely an eye blink into our own potential. But the speed of our progress is unlike anything nature has seen before. It took life billions of years to crawl from the sea, but only centuries for us to touch the edge of space. We now hold forces that can reshape the planet in decades. That acceleration, that reckless momentum, may be the true filter. Too much power, too soon. Perhaps this is the universal pattern. Every intelligent species invents tools that outpace its wisdom. Technology becomes their trial, and power becomes their predator. Civilizations that pass this test, if any ever have, would need not only intelligence, but unity, empathy, and foresight. They would need to see the fire coming long before it burns. Here on Earth, our warning signs have already begun. Rising temperatures, fractured ecosystems, growing machines that learn faster than their makers. We stand at a crossroad that feels familiar in the context of the Great Filter, a moment every advanced species might face. The point where evolution hands over the pen and says, "Write the next chapter carefully." If we fail, our fall will not echo across the stars. The universe will simply absorb us, indifferent, the way it has absorbed all who came before. Our cities will fade into dust, our satellites will fall, and our signals will scatter into the cosmic background until not even their static remains. But if we succeed, if we can pass through this era of danger without erasing ourselves, then perhaps we will become something the universe has almost never seen, a civilization that survives its own awakening. Maybe that's what the Great Filter demands. Not perfection, but perspective. Not domination, but harmony. To endure, we must learn to wield our brilliance without blindness. To become not the next silence in the void, but its first answer. If every civilization eventually falls, then the silence is not emptiness, it's a warning. The stars may not be quiet because they're empty, but because they've seen this pattern before. Perhaps the stillness of the night sky isn't the absence of voices, it's the echo of lessons already learned. Maybe, somewhere deep in the cosmic past, other civilizations also sent signals into the void, hopeful and naive, their messages full of pride and wonder. And perhaps, after a brief shimmer of contact, their voices faded, not from distance, but from destiny. The stars remember. They've watched it happen before. To us, the cosmos seems eternal. But to the stars, civilizations must appear like fireflies, brief flickers of light against an endless backdrop. Each one burns brightly, then goes dark, leaving behind no ruins, no echoes, just a faint ripple of energy dispersing into space. The silence we hear may be their final message, written not in words, but in absence. What if every intelligent species at some point hears the same warning, the same unspoken truth hidden in the quiet? Slow down. Listen. Do not mistake intelligence for immortality. Because the stars do not lie. They show us the lifespan of power. Even suns die, collapsing into white dwarfs and black holes. If entire stars can burn out, what chance does a fragile civilization have against time? Perhaps the universe is teaching us humility, not through punishment, but through example. Some scientists imagine that civilizations that survived the Great Filter have learned to be silent on purpose. They may have seen what happens to those who shout too loudly into the dark. If the cosmos truly behaves like a dark forest, then the first rule is clear. Don't draw attention, don't reveal yourself, don't make the same mistake. It's haunting to imagine that the night sky might be full of civilizations, hiding behind their own silence, whispering only to themselves, afraid to call out. But maybe that fear is wisdom, the kind learned through loss. If the silence is a warning, then perhaps we're hearing it already. The rising hum of technology, the fragility of our ecosystems, the thin layer of atmosphere that shields us from oblivion. all of it whispers the same truth. Be careful. The same flame that carried us this far could still consume us. The stars, ancient and unblinking, do not judge us, but they do remind us of what endures and what doesn't. They've seen civilizations come and go, perhaps billions of times over. They've watched planets bloom with life and then fall back into quiet stone. And so, when we gaze at them and find no answer, maybe we're looking at the answer itself, the silence, the warning, a reminder that the universe rewards survival not with glory, but with longevity. That progress without wisdom ends in the same stillness that surrounds us now. The stars may not speak, but in their silence lies a message older than life itself. This is what happens when you forget how to listen. Perhaps we're not alone at all, merely quarantined. Advanced civilizations may watch us as curiously as we watch animals behind glass, waiting to see if we pass or fail our test of maturity. It's one of the more unsettling possibilities that the great silence isn't due to absence, but observation. That somewhere out there, hidden among the stars, an ancient intelligence already knows we exist, and that for reasons we don't yet understand, it chooses not to answer. The idea is called the zoo hypothesis. It suggests that Earth, and perhaps worlds like it, is part of a vast cosmic preserve, that advanced civilizations may deliberately avoid contact with emerging species, allowing them to evolve naturally without interference. Like zookeepers watching from behind one-way glass, they observe, study, and wait for us to reach a certain threshold of maturity. Only then, perhaps, will they step forward. It sounds like science fiction, but it raises an important question. If we discovered a primitive civilization on another planet, would we reveal ourselves? Or would we watch quietly, curious to see how far they could go on their own? After all, even on Earth, we protect uncontacted tribes to preserve their way of life, understanding that direct contact could destroy what makes them unique. Maybe the same rule applies on a galactic scale. To such beings, if they exist, we must appear young, reckless, and unpredictable. A species still arguing with itself, still learning to balance knowledge with wisdom. Our planet may be teeming with signals and activity, but from the perspective of a civilization millions of years ahead, we might be little more than a faint radio hiss, interesting, but not yet ready. Perhaps they're listening even now, sifting through our broadcasts, our history, our music, watching as we stumble through conflict and discovery, waiting for the moment when we finally learn cooperation on a planetary scale. That could be the test, the universal sign of maturity, the ability to survive ourselves. If the zoo hypothesis is true, then the great filter might not be extinction, but observation, a waiting period in which civilizations are silently monitored until they prove capable of peaceful coexistence. Those that fail vanish into history. Those that succeed join the greater cosmic community. It's a strangely hopeful idea that the universe isn't empty, but patient. That silence isn't rejection, but restraint. Perhaps we're the exhibit that hasn't yet earned its freedom. And maybe, somewhere in that silence, our observers are taking notes, watching cities rise, oceans warm, satellites multiply. Maybe they debate as we do, whether humanity will make it through the dangerous adolescence every intelligent species must face. At night, when we aim our telescopes toward the stars, we may already be looking into their eyes, unseen, but aware. The silence, then, might not be loneliness, but anticipation. Maybe one day, when we finally learn to see each other not as rivals, but as one species beneath one fragile sky, the glass will dissolve, the zoo gates will open, and the universe, which has been watching quietly all along, will finally say, "Welcome. We were waiting for you." In a dangerous universe, silence may be survival. If every civilization hides to avoid detection, then the cosmos is not empty. It's crowded, tense, and listening. The great filter could be fear. Imagine the universe as an endless forest at night. Every civilization is a lone traveler, walking among the trees, holding a small lantern of technology and communication. The light of that lantern can be seen from far away, an announcement to the dark, "We are here." But in this forest, you don't know what else might be watching. You don't know who or what shares the shadows with you. This is the dark forest hypothesis, first popularized in science fiction but chillingly logical when viewed through the lens of survival. If resources are finite and life is rare, then every civilization must assume that others could pose a threat. And since one can never be sure of another's intentions, the safest move is to remain silent or strike first. From this perspective, the Great Silence isn't a mystery, it's a strategy. Every advanced species that survives long enough to understand the dangers of the cosmos learns the same lesson. To speak is to risk annihilation. Those that called out too loudly may no longer exist to regret it. Perhaps then the stars are quiet not because they are empty, but because they are full. 1,000 civilizations might coexist in uneasy stillness, each one hiding in the dark, listening for others but never daring to reveal themselves. The universe becomes a vast, invisible stalemate, a galaxy of watchers and whispered. It's a terrifying thought, but one that mirrors nature. On Earth, every ecosystem carries the same unspoken rule. The loudest creature is often the first to die. Predators listen, prey hides. Evolution favors the cautious. Maybe cosmic evolution is no different. Maybe the most advanced civilizations are the ones we'll never find precisely because they learn to disappear. In that sense, humanity's search for extraterrestrial intelligence may seem reckless. We beam signals into the void, declaring our presence, assuming goodwill. But what if goodwill is the rarest resource of all? What if the reason no one responds is not because they can't, but because they won't? Some theorists suggest that civilizations that endure for millions of years do so by mastering silence. They camouflage their planets, encrypt their communications, and hide their energy signatures to blend into the cosmic background. To them, invisibility is the ultimate technology, the key to longevity in a universe that rewards the unseen. And if the dark forest is real, then the great filter might not be extinction by accident, but by fear. A universe full of intelligent life that has learned to whisper, to dim its lights, and to wait in the quiet. When we look up at the stars, we may not be staring into emptiness at all, but into an ancient game of survival. A galaxy frozen in mutual dread. Every light, every silence, every unexplained flicker in the sky could be a civilization holding its breath, hoping not to be noticed. So perhaps the most haunting question isn't, where is everyone, but who's listening? And in that question lies the truth of the dark forest, where every voice risks becoming an echo, and every echo could be your last. Even if civilizations survive, their signals may not. Radio waves fade, stars drift, languages evolve. Two civilizations might live side by side for millennia and never hear one another. Communication, though simple to us, is one of the most fragile miracles in the universe. Every signal we send, every photon that carries meaning, is a delicate thread cast into the vast ocean of space. And in that ocean, time and distance are merciless. A message meant for one world might drift for thousands of years before it ever reaches another, if it reaches at all. The truth is, space doesn't just separate us in miles, it separates us in time. The radio waves we began transmitting a century ago have travelled barely 100 light-years. That's enough to reach only a tiny fraction of the stars in our own galaxy. To most of the universe, we are still silent, and if others have spoken, their words may be lost in the static of the cosmos, scattered by dust, absorbed by gas, or drowned in the noise of stars. Even if we and another civilization transmitted at the same moment, we'd still need to be listening at the same frequency, at the same time, in the same brief window of alignment. The odds are astronomically small. In cosmic terms, two civilizations might be neighbors, yet still separated by centuries of delay, like two ships passing in the night, their lanterns glowing in opposite directions. And then there is the matter of language. Even if a signal reached us perfectly, would we understand it? We can barely decipher the languages of our own planet's past, ancient scripts carved into stone. How would we interpret a message written in alien logic, coded by minds, shaped by entirely different senses, symbols, and perceptions? What if the signal is there, hidden in plain sight, but we lack the perspective to recognize it? Perhaps the great silence is not a lack of voices, but a failure of comprehension. The universe may already be whispering, but our ears are too new, our minds too narrow to hear its song. Communication requires more than transmission. It requires timing, empathy, and context. It requires two species to exist not only in the same universe, but in the same moment of understanding. The cosmos is too vast, and time too long, for that to happen often. Even here on Earth, across cultures and centuries, communication falters, meanings shift, words decay, messages are lost. If it's this fragile among one species on one planet, how fragile must it be between worlds separated by thousands of light years and billions of years of evolution? So maybe we are surrounded by civilizations that once spoke, some that still do, but their voices have faded into the background hum of eternity. When we search for signals, we are not only looking outward, we are listening across time itself, hoping to catch a whisper that might already be centuries old. And even if we never hear it, that hope connects us to something profound. Maybe that belief, the act of listening, is what makes us part of the conversation at all. Light is fast, but not fast enough. Even at light speed, messages take centuries to cross the galaxy. Communication itself may be the barrier that isolates every species forever. When we speak of the speed of light, it sounds limitless, 300,000 kilometers per second, a beam crossing the Earth in less than a blink. What seems instantaneous here becomes unbearably slow out there. Across the gulf of interstellar space, light years stretch like centuries, and words become fossils before they arrive. If humanity sent a message to a civilization 1,000 light years away, that message wouldn't reach them until the year 3025. And if they replied immediately, we wouldn't hear their answer until the year 4025. An entire civilization, ours or theirs, could rise, flourish, and vanish before the first sentence of conversation was ever complete. In that way, distance itself may be the cruelest filter of all. The universe is vast but not empty. It teems with potential worlds, possible lives, and unspoken stories. Yet the sheer expanse of it makes connection nearly impossible. Space doesn't just separate planets, it separates moments. To communicate across it is to speak into the past, to send a message that will arrive in a future you'll never see. Perhaps this is why the cosmos feels so silent. Not because there is no one to talk to, but because no one can be heard in time. Civilizations may exist simultaneously, but be forever out of sync, ships stranded in an infinite sea, each seeing the faint lights of the others, but too far away to ever bridge the distance. Even travel itself may offer no escape. The nearest star system, Proxima Centauri, is over 4 light-years away. With our fastest spacecraft, it would take tens of thousands of years to get there. Across the galaxy, the average distance between inhabited systems, if they exist, could be measured not in years, but in lifetimes of civilizations. By the time one species reaches another, the destination may already be dust. We think of the Great Filter as destruction, but maybe it's simply separation. The laws of physics might be the ultimate barrier, the invisible wall that prevents life from ever truly connecting. The speed of light, a constant of nature, becomes both the foundation of existence and the prison of communication. There's something deeply poetic and deeply tragic about that. A universe filled with intelligence, yet deafened by its own enormity. A cosmos where every world sings its own song, but the notes can never harmonize. Perhaps the silence we hear is not failure, it's distance. The space between signals, the pause between voices. And yet, we still try. We build telescopes that listen, antennas that whisper, probes that wander. We reach out, knowing that our messages may never be answered, that our words may travel longer than our species survives. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the act of reaching is itself the connection. To speak, even into the void, is to defy the tyranny of distance, to say, in the language of light, we were here. We tried. We believed someone might be listening. Technological civilizations might last only centuries. In cosmic time, that's less than a blink. Perhaps we are listening between blinks, too late to hear the last, too early to hear the next. It's easy to imagine that a civilization, once born, will endure, but the universe tells a different story. Even stars, vast, ancient, seemingly eternal, have lifespans. They flare, fade, and die. Civilizations, bound to the fragile worlds that nurture them, must be even more temporary. For all our ambition, for all our technology, we have existed as a spacefaring species for less than a single human lifetime. Against the backdrop of billions of years, we are a spark suspended in infinity. What if all civilizations burn this briefly? What if the galaxy is full of sparks, each flaring into brilliance, broadcasting for a heartbeat before fading back into the dark? If so, the night sky isn't empty, it's alive with ghosts. The light we search for has already gone out. The civilizations we hope to contact may have vanished long before our species even learned to dream. When we listen for alien signals, we are listening across time. The light we see from distant stars left those systems thousands or millions of years ago. If a civilization lived there, its messages would arrive not as a conversation, but as an echo, a fossilized beam from a world that may already be gone. By the time their light reaches us, their cities may be dust, their oceans ice, and by the time our reply returns, we might be gone as well. In this cosmic relay of extinction, communication becomes almost impossible. Every civilization transmits for a while, then vanishes, leaving only its radiation drifting outward forever. The gaps between those signals could span millions of years. We may be living in one of those gaps right now, a quiet interval between one voice fading and the next awakening. Maybe this is the simplest answer to the Fermi Paradox. Life arises often, intelligence blooms briefly, but technology, that bright, volatile flame, burns fast and burns out. Civilizations reach a certain level of power and complexity, then collapse, whether through self-destruction, environmental ruin, or slow decay. The universe then becomes a kind of cosmic Morse code, a single pulse here, another there, separated by eons of silence. Even if we could find evidence of these vanished worlds, we might only discover ruins, planetary scars, artificial rings, or fragments of machinery orbiting dead suns. Signs not of communication, but of memory. Artifacts that say, we were here once, and we too tried to reach the stars. The tragedy isn't that life is rare, it's that it's brief. The galaxy may be full of civilizations that have already lived and died, their light now blending into the background radiation of the universe. And in that vast stillness, we are another flicker, momentary, fragile, and perhaps unseen. But maybe that's what makes our moment precious. We exist now, in this narrow window of awareness, between the silence before and the silence after. Our task is not only to listen, but to endure, to keep our light burning long enough for someone, someday, to see it. And if no one ever does, still, our light will have been real. It will have travelled outward, across the endless night, a brief defiance against the inevitable dark, a message written in the language of hope. What if silence is mercy? Perhaps nature enforces the filter, not as punishment, but protection, preserving the delicate balance that makes life possible in the first place. We often think of the Great Filter as something cruel, a cosmic barrier that wipes civilizations away. But what if it's not malice, nor accident, but design? What if the universe has built-in safeguards, subtle and silent, meant to preserve life by limiting how far it can spread. Consider how delicate existence truly is. Life thrives only in a razor-thin band of conditions, a narrow equilibrium of temperature, chemistry, and radiation. Too much light, and oceans evaporate. Too little, and they freeze. Too much curiosity, and a civilization may consume its own world in the name of progress. The silence, then, could be the universe's way of maintaining balance, ensuring that no one voice grows loud enough to drown out the harmony of the whole. Perhaps every time a species reaches too high, the cosmos intervenes, not through intention but through inevitability. A gentle self-correction written into the fabric of reality. A limit disguised as chance. A law that says, grow but not too far, reach but not too fast. The great filter, then, becomes a quiet guardian, keeping the universe from tearing itself apart. On Earth, we see echoes of this pattern everywhere. Ecosystems regulate themselves through cycles of birth, decay, and renewal. When a species overreaches, nature restores balance, sometimes harshly but always precisely. Maybe civilizations are no different, self-regulating phenomena that burn brightly, then fade, so that life as a whole can continue. This idea, this protective silence, casts the universe not as a graveyard but as a garden, a place where too much noise could ruin the fragile rhythm that allows existence to flourish. Intelligent life might be rare, not because it's unwelcome, but because it's powerful, too powerful, and must be kept in check by natural limits. Radiation bursts, asteroid impacts, resource exhaustion, the speed of light itself, all could be mechanisms of mercy, invisible boundaries drawn to preserve balance. Perhaps that's why the cosmos seems empty. Because true peace requires quiet. The same quiet that allows stars to burn steadily, planets to orbit calmly, and life to unfold without constant interruption. The silence we interpret as loneliness could, in truth, be the sound of harmony, a universe maintaining its own fragile order. And maybe the lesson for us is humility, to understand that not all silence is hostile, and not all limits are cruel. Some exist to protect us from ourselves, to give us space to grow slowly, wisely, and sustainably. When we look at the stars and ache for contact, perhaps the universe answers, not with words, but with a kind of gentle refusal. A reminder that we are still young, still learning, still too loud for the symphony. The great filter, then, might not be a wall to break through, but a whisper to heed. Not you shall not pass, but not yet. And in that stillness, that merciful quiet, the universe gives us what every growing species needs most: time. Maybe some have made it through. Civilizations that learn to hide, to transcend, or to live beyond the material plane. If they exist, they are quiet, not because they're gone, but because they've evolved past the need to speak. If the great filter is real, and most fail to pass it, then logic suggests that a few must succeed. Somewhere out there, scattered among the galaxies, might be the rare survivors. Civilizations that endured their adolescence, mastered their technology, and learned to live in harmony with their worlds. But if they exist, why can't we see them? Why do they remain invisible? Perhaps because survival, at the highest level, requires disappearance. The civilizations that last might not broadcast their presence, build colossal empires, or scatter megastructures across the stars. They may have learned that the loudest species are the first to vanish. To endure, they would have to evolve in silence, concealing themselves from detection, not out of fear, but wisdom. The universe rewards those who listen more than those who shout. Some might have gone even further, beyond physical existence altogether. Once a species masters its environment and technology, perhaps it transcends biology itself, merging with machines or becoming forms of consciousness that no longer need matter. To such beings, communication through radio waves or visible light would seem primitive, inefficient, even meaningless. They may not speak because they found a higher form of connection, something instantaneous, internal, and boundless. Imagine a civilization that no longer builds cities or sends ships, because it has learned to live within the fabric of space-time itself. One that has woven its consciousness into the quantum substrate of the universe, thoughts encoded not in words or waves, but in the dance of particles and the hum of dark energy. To us, they would be indistinguishable from nature itself. The background noise of reality could be their heartbeat. Perhaps they're all around us, interwoven with the structure of existence, silent, vast, and watching. Their quiet is not absence, but ascension. Another possibility is that they've retreated inward. Instead of expanding across the stars, they've turned their gaze towards simulated worlds of their own making, perfect digital realities where consciousness can exist indefinitely. To them, the physical universe may feel like an outdated medium, a rough draft they've long since moved beyond. If that's true, then the reason we can't find them isn't because they died. It's because they no longer need to be found. They've become self-sustaining, content, and perhaps even indifferent to the material realm. The great silence, in this sense, might be the sound of enlightenment, the quiet peace of civilizations that have transcended struggle, noise, and need. And yet, maybe they still care. Maybe, every so often, they peek back into the material world, watching young civilizations like ours the way we might watch our distant past through a telescope. To them, we are ancient history, primitive, beautiful, and fragile, a reminder of where they began. If such beings exist, we might never detect them. They would blend seamlessly into the cosmic background, their technology indistinguishable from the natural processes of the universe itself. Clarke's third law would ring true on a universal scale. Their science would appear to us as magic, their presence as silence. The hidden survivors, then, may be the quiet shepherds of existence, those who have outgrown the need for conquest, for communication, even for recognition. They are simply beyond our reach, beyond our comprehension, living in harmony with a universe we are only beginning to understand. And perhaps, one distant day, if we too survive the filters ahead, we will join them, not as conquerors of the cosmos, but as caretakers of its stillness. Even if civilizations survive, the universe itself may not allow permanence. Stars die, galaxies collide, entropy rises. Time itself could be the ultimate filter, erasing every trace of achievement. The great filter may not be a single event, nor a stage of evolution, nor even a choice. It may simply be the slow and inevitable decay of everything. In the end, time devours all. Every planet, every species, every spark of consciousness is subject to the same law. Nothing lasts forever. Our universe is ancient, 13.8 billion years old, and still it is young compared to what lies ahead. The stars we see tonight will one day fade, their fuel exhausted, their brilliance swallowed by the dark. Entire galaxies will collide and merge, forming new stars for a while, then dimming once more as the cosmic furnace runs out of fuel. Eventually, there will be no light left to see, no heat left to sustain life. If civilizations exist, they must fight not only against extinction and distance, but against time itself, a battle that no one can truly win. Even if a species survived every disaster, mastered energy, and spread across the cosmos, the universe would still, eventually, outlast them. The stars that sustain them would die. The black holes that remain would evaporate. The energy that powers existence would thin into silence. This is known as the heat death of the universe, the ultimate entropy. A future where all energy is evenly distributed, where nothing new can happen because there is no imbalance left to fuel change. No stars, no planets, no life. Only darkness, stretching forever. For a civilization billions of years older than ours, this reality would not be theoretical, it would be imminent. Imagine existing in a universe where most stars are already dead, where matter itself is scarce, and where every moment of energy must be rationed like breath in a collapsing lung. To such beings, survival would mean adaptation beyond imagination, perhaps converting consciousness into quantum patterns, or escaping into artificial realities fueled by the faint embers of dying stars. But even that would not last forever. Time would continue, indifferent, infinite. Every structure, every thought, every dream would eventually dissolve into the same quiet equilibrium. The great filter, then, is not a test to pass, but a truth to accept. Time erases all stories. And yet, there's something profound in that. The impermanence of everything makes every moment precious. Our brief window of existence, our fragile awareness, it all matters because it won't last. Against the vast current of entropy, the act of living, of creating, of wondering at all, becomes an act of defiance. Maybe the goal was never to escape time, but to dance with it. To burn brightly, knowing the flame cannot endure. To carve meaning into a cosmos that will one day forget, and to do it anyway. The filter of time may indeed claim everything, but before it does, it gives us this. A universe alive, awake, and fleetingly aware of itself. And perhaps that fleeting awareness, our brief conscious moment in eternity, is all the immortality the universe ever intended. Maybe the filter is simply chance. Earth might be the cosmic anomaly, a world where everything, from atmosphere to moon size to magnetic field, aligned perfectly once in a trillion times. In the infinite lottery of the cosmos, life as we know it may have drawn a winning ticket that is almost never repeated. The rare Earth hypothesis suggests that while simple life might arise throughout the universe, the conditions needed for complex intelligent organisms, creatures capable of reflection, technology, and curiosity, are extraordinarily rare. Not because the ingredients are missing, but because the recipe must be followed with impossible precision. Look at what had to go right for us to exist. Our planet orbits in the habitable zone, not too close to the sun's fire, not too far from its warmth. We have a large moon that stabilizes Earth's tilt, preventing wild swings in climate. Our magnetic field shields us from lethal radiation. Our giant neighbor Jupiter acts as a cosmic guardian, catching comets that might otherwise strike our fragile world. Even the placement of our solar system, tucked away in a quiet arm of the Milky Way, far from the chaos of the galactic core, protects us from deadly bursts of radiation. If even one of these factors were missing, life might never have developed, or if it did, it might never have reached beyond the microbial stage. Perhaps, on most worlds, evolution begins but never escapes the tide pools. On others, life flourishes for a while before catastrophe resets it. Intelligent species could be as rare as a perfect storm, a harmony of luck, physics, and patience. When you consider how many variables had to align, Earth begins to look less like a typical planet and more like a cosmic miracle. A fragile oasis floating in a universe mostly hostile to life. Out there, most worlds are either frozen wastelands or infernos of heat and pressure. The thin band of habitability, the Goldilocks zone, is narrow, and even within it, stability is fleeting. Perhaps that's why we haven't heard anyone else. Not because life is impossible, but because life like ours is nearly impossible. The silence of the cosmos may not be a mystery. It may be statistics. We were the 1 in a trillion that made it this far. It's humbling, and a little lonely, to think of ourselves as an exception rather than a rule. Yet it also adds meaning to our existence. If we are that rare, then our survival is sacred. Every mountain, every breath of air, every spark of thought becomes precious. We are the improbable outcome of billions of coincidences aligning across billions of years. Maybe that's what the great filter truly is, not destruction, but improbability. A universe that allows consciousness to emerge only when everything, absolutely everything, goes right. And so, we look to the stars not just for company, but for perspective. To be reminded that our existence is not guaranteed, that life is a fragile balance maintained by grace, chance, and time. If Earth is the exception, then we are its witnesses. The universe's rare moment of awareness, looking back upon itself and whispering, "This is what it feels like to be alive." From asteroid deflections to stable climates, Earth has survived countless extinction events by luck. The Great Filter could just be probability, the sheer unlikelihood of a planet staying alive long enough to think. Our world's history is written in narrow escapes. Every continent, every fossil layer, bears silent witness to the odds we've beaten. 5 times, life has come close to being erased entirely. By ice, by fire, by rock from the sky, and yet, each time, it endured. Each time, the line of existence bent but did not break. And from that fragile thread, intelligence eventually emerged. When we look back across the eons, it's astonishing how often chance intervened. 66 million years ago, an asteroid ended the age of dinosaurs, but it could just as easily have missed. If it had struck a few minutes earlier or later, landing in the deep Pacific instead of the Yucatan, the climate impact might have been far milder. Mammals might never have risen to dominance. Humanity might never have existed. One rock, at the wrong angle, could have rewritten everything. And that was only one of countless narrow escapes. The Earth has been struck by planet-sized bodies, frozen from pole to pole, and nearly suffocated by its own volcanic gases. Yet somehow, the planet always stabilized, the temperatures returned, the seas thawed, life recovered. Over and over again, the conditions for survival, so precarious, so fleeting, were maintained. Maybe that's the real great filter. Not war, not technology, not time, but luck. The simple, brutal mathematics of probability. For a civilization to exist, a planet must survive billions of years of hazards, cosmic collisions, solar flares, magnetic reversals, runaway warming or freezing, and the slow shifting of continents. Each of these events could erase a species or an entire biosphere in an instant. When you multiply those odds across all the steps from chemistry to consciousness, the miracle becomes clear. It's not that life never arises, it's that it rarely lasts. Worlds may bloom with microbial life, only to perish before evolution can take its next step. Civilizations may ignite, only to be wiped clean before they can even look upward. The universe could be littered with the ghosts of worlds that almost made it. And somehow, we're still here. Orbiting a stable star, cushioned by a magnetic field, shielded by a gas giant, balanced just far enough from cosmic catastrophe to ask why we survived. Maybe there's nothing more to it than chance. Not divine intervention, not destiny, just the physics of probability. Rolling dice across deep time. We are the statistical anomaly, the improbable survivors of a game no one else won. It's a humbling realization, but also a beautiful one. Because if our existence is the product of pure luck, then every sunrise, every breath, every moment of awareness becomes sacred. We are not inevitable, we are fortunate. And perhaps that is the quiet truth behind the great filter. That intelligence is not the rule, but the rare reward of persistence and chance. The universe is full of worlds, but only one, so far as we know, was lucky enough to look up and wonder if it was alone. Civilizations rise like waves, build, peak, and fall. The pattern might be universal, repeating endlessly across time. Perhaps the great filter isn't one event, but the natural rhythm of all intelligent life. Every species that reaches awareness also inherits impermanence. From the first spark of fire to the first signal sent to the stars, the arc of progress has always followed a curve, a brief ascent into brilliance followed by decline. We see it in our own history. Empires born in innovation, reaching dazzling heights, then dissolving into memory. Maybe that same rhythm plays out not just on Earth, but everywhere. Civilizations, like stars, may have life cycles. They begin with curiosity, the discovery of tools, energy, and communication. Then comes expansion, cities, technology, exploration, the mastery of nature. But eventually, the curve bends downward. Resources run thin, power consolidates, systems grow unstable, and progress becomes unsustainable. The higher a civilization climbs, the heavier the weight of its own complexity becomes. On Earth, we've seen this curve many times in miniature. The Egyptians, the Mayans, the Romans all reached peaks of knowledge and culture that seemed eternal. And yet each fell, undone not by lack of intelligence, but by imbalance, ecological strain, internal conflict, or the slow decay of order. Civilization itself, it seems, carries the seed of entropy within it. Now stretch that pattern across the galaxy. 1,000 civilizations might have existed before us, each one following its own curve. Some may have risen higher, harnessing energies beyond our imagination. Others may have fallen sooner, undone by wars or environmental collapse. In the end, all would follow the same shape: a rise, a peak, a fall, their light fading into the cosmic background before the next wave begins. If the Great Filter is real, maybe it isn't a single wall waiting in the future. It's a slope we all eventually slide down. The universe doesn't need to destroy civilizations outright. It only needs to let time work. A few thousand years of stability, and then decline, too brief to bridge the vast distances between stars, too short to leave a lasting mark. Perhaps this rhythm is built into intelligence itself. The more advanced a species becomes, the more fragile it grows. Its dependence on technology deepens, its systems interlock, and the margin for error narrows. A single mistake, ecological, social, or technological, can cascade through the entire structure. Progress becomes self-limiting, and collapse becomes inevitable. But there's beauty in this impermanence too. Each rise leaves behind traces, art, ruins, signals, ideas that echo faintly through the cosmos. The pattern of creation and decay may be the universe's way of keeping balance, of ensuring that no single voice dominates the symphony for too long. We like to imagine eternity as success. But maybe eternity is impossible. Maybe the greatness of a civilization is not measured by how long it lasts, but by how brightly it burns during its brief moment in the dark. The Great Filter, then, may not be a punishment or a mistake. It might simply be the cosmic heartbeat, the rise and fall of civilizations pulsing endlessly across time. And if that's true, then our task isn't to escape the curve, but to understand it, to live wisely within our moment, to make our wave count before it crashes back into the sea of stars. SETI has scanned the sky for decades, yet no signal has ever been confirmed. Maybe the search itself is flawed, not because the answers aren't there, but because we don't yet know how to listen. For more than half a century, we've pointed our antennas toward the heavens, sifting through the static of the stars for anything that breaks the pattern of randomness. We've listened to hydrogen frequencies, tracked narrowband signals, and built arrays spanning continents, all in the hope of hearing a voice that isn't our own. Yet the universe has remained silent, or so it seems. But silence, in science, is not always absence. It might be misunderstanding. We listen with human ears and human logic, assuming that alien life would communicate as we do, through radio waves, through patterns we recognize. What if that assumption blinds us? What if the cosmos is already alive with communication, but in forms we haven't yet evolved to perceive? It's possible that we're like early fish at the bottom of an ocean, aware only of the currents around us, never realizing there's a sky above the waterline. Our tools, as advanced as they seem, may still be primitive compared to the language of the universe. Perhaps extraterrestrial civilizations don't use radio at all. They might communicate through gravitational waves, quantum entanglement, or dimensions we haven't yet discovered. Their messages could be encoded in magnetic fields, bursts of neutrinos, or even the fabric of space-time itself. If so, we might be surrounded by information, signals flowing through us, around us, beyond us, unnoticed because we're tuned to the wrong channel. Even if they do use radio, our timing could be tragically off. Maybe civilizations broadcast only for a short while before evolving beyond the need for such technology. Their radio age might last just a few centuries, a whisper in cosmic time. We might be listening centuries too late or too early, like someone tuning into a conversation that ended long ago. The great silence could also be an illusion of expectation. We look for artificial patterns, repetition, modulation, structure. But what if intelligence expresses itself in chaos? Nature itself creates patterns so complex they appear random to us. A truly advanced message might not even resemble communication, but physics, art, or mathematics beyond our recognition. Maybe, too, the problem isn't where we're listening, but how we're interpreting. SETI searches for intent, for signs of design. But what if alien communication is not intentional at all, but ambient, unconscious transmissions woven into their existence the way heat radiates from a star? And then there's the possibility that the great silence is our own doing, our own noise. Earth hums constantly with radio chatter, satellites, radar, and digital signals, so much that the universe's faint whispers may be drowned out by our own voice echoing back. Still, we keep listening, because to search, even in silence, is to affirm that connection is possible. Every scan, every beam of data is an act of cosmic optimism, a statement that we believe we are not alone, even when all evidence says otherwise. Maybe, someday, when we've learned to see the universe through more than just our limited senses, we'll realize the silence was never real, that the cosmos has been speaking all along, softly, patiently, in a language we are only beginning to remember how to hear. Perhaps the greatest barrier isn't external at all, but psychological. The inability to cooperate, to act beyond self-interest. Civilizations might die not from bombs or stars, but from ego. For all our intelligence, we remain fragile in ways that science cannot measure. The same consciousness that allows us to build civilizations also divides us, with fear, pride, and hunger for control. We wage wars over beliefs, resources, and borders drawn on a single planet beneath a sky that belongs to none of us. And maybe that's the truest form of the great filter, the mind's own limitations. Intelligence gives rise to awareness, but awareness gives rise to desire. And desire, unchecked, becomes destruction. Every species that reaches our level of understanding must eventually face this same psychological test. Can they learn empathy fast enough to wield their power without self-annihilation? It's not technology that dooms civilizations, it's psychology. Tools amplify whatever already lives within their creators. Fire can cook or burn, atoms can heal or destroy. Artificial intelligence can serve or enslave. The direction depends not on invention, but intention. If fear or greed dominate, progress becomes poison. On Earth, this test is already underway. We have the means to end hunger, to preserve ecosystems, to ensure a stable future for generations. Yet we hesitate, distracted by divisions that feel small when viewed from orbit. We chase short-term gains while the planet trembles beneath the weight of our choices. It's not that we can't solve our problems, it's that we struggle to agree on what solving them means. Perhaps every civilization faces this same inward struggle. The moment consciousness evolves beyond survival, it must confront something far harder: coexistence. To see itself not as many, but as one. Some may succeed, uniting their world under wisdom and restraint. Others may fail, dissolving into conflict until nothing remains but ruins and echoes. If so, the great filter might be less a cosmic trap and more a mirror. It doesn't wait in the future, it lives within us now, in every decision, every act of compassion or cruelty. It's the quiet test written into the heart of intelligence. Can a species survive its own reflection? We like to think the universe tests us with distance and danger, but maybe it's subtler than that. Maybe it whispers its greatest challenge into every mind capable of choice. You are powerful now. What will you do with it? Our greatest threat may not be extinction by asteroid or machine, but the small, invisible collapse of meaning, the erosion of unity, the triumph of apathy. Civilizations might end not in fire, but in indifference, not through war, but through the slow decay of empathy. And yet, that realization gives us hope too. Because if the filter is within, then so is the key to passing it. Awareness can destroy, but it can also heal. The same consciousness that divides us can also connect us if we learn to use it wisely. Perhaps, in the grand silence, the universe is waiting, not for us to invent faster ships or louder signals, but for us to overcome ourselves. Because once a species learns true cooperation, it no longer shouts into the void, it listens, it endures, and maybe, just maybe, it finally joins the others who learn to do the same. To survive the filter, a species must learn empathy, not just for its own kind, but for all life. Evolution rewards competition, but survival beyond the filter may demand unity. Every living thing begins with struggle. Life, by its very nature, fights to exist, to consume, to defend, to pass its genes forward. That instinct has driven evolution for billions of years, shaping creatures strong enough to survive in a world that never forgives weakness. But intelligence changes the rules. It introduces awareness, and with it, choice. For the first time in the history of the planet, a species can decide what kind of life it wants to create. We can build or destroy, nurture or dominate. Our future isn't just a product of evolution anymore, it's a reflection of empathy. Maybe that is the true threshold of civilization. The moment when intelligence learns compassion. Because empathy is not an accident of biology, it's the one force that resists entropy. It unites what the universe constantly pulls apart. To feel the pain of another being, to act with kindness towards something that gains you nothing, that's not just morality, it's survival. Perhaps across the cosmos, every intelligent species faces this same moral awakening. They evolve, they thrive, they gain power, and then they must learn to care for what they could easily destroy. It's a test that can't be solved by technology or strategy. It's solved only through understanding, through the slow and difficult evolution of the heart. Here on Earth, our progress has brought us to the edge of that test. We've learned to harness the atom, to reshape the planet, to reach beyond our cradle. But our empathy has not yet evolved as fast as our tools. We still see the world in fragments, us and them, human and non-human, nation and rival, when, from the universe's perspective, there is only one fragile, luminous species spinning through space. If the great filter is compassion, then perhaps most civilizations fail not because they can't think, but because they can't feel. Intelligence without empathy becomes self-destructive. Knowledge without kindness becomes cold. The mind can conquer nature, but only the heart can coexist with it. And maybe, just maybe, the few civilizations that do survive, those who have passed the test, no longer wage war or hunger for domination. They live in harmony with their worlds, with one another, with the universe itself. To us, they would seem almost divine, not because of their power, but because of their peace. The great filter may not be an obstacle to overcome, but a mirror held up to every mind that dares to awaken. It asks one question in infinite ways. Can you care enough to endure? If we learn that lesson, if we extend empathy not just to our kind, but to all of existence, then maybe we will finally earn our place among the stars. Because survival, in the deepest sense, isn't about living forever. It's about learning to live gently enough that forever becomes possible. Every civilization faces a moment when it must decide, expand outward or collapse inward. This decision, conscious or not, might be the true filter separating those who endure from those who vanish. The story of intelligence is always the same. Curiosity births technology. Technology births power. And power demands choice. At some point, every species capable of shaping its world must answer a question older than the stars themselves. Expansion is the natural instinct. Life spreads. It explores, consumes, multiplies. From the first cell dividing in an ancient ocean to the first human stepping onto the moon, the drive to grow outward is woven into every strand of DNA. Yet unchecked expansion carries a hidden danger. Growth without balance can destroy the very environment that sustains it. Civilizations that spread too quickly may burn through their resources, their ecosystems, and even their own will to survive. Collapse, on the other hand, begins quietly. It doesn't come from running out of energy, but from running out of unity. A civilization that turns inward too long loses sight of purpose. It fragments, innovation slows, cooperation breaks, and progress withers beneath the weight of fear or apathy. When that happens, no asteroid or supernova is needed to end a species. It simply fades, its potential unrealized, its story unfinished. Somewhere between those two extremes lies the balance. Sustainable expansion. A civilization wise enough to explore the stars without devouring them. Ambitious enough to build, but humble enough to preserve. Those who find that balance may be the ones who survive the Great Filter, not because they conquered the universe, but because they learned to coexist with it. We may be approaching that moment ourselves. Humanity stands on the threshold of extraordinary power, artificial intelligence, genetic mastery, planetary engineering. These are not just technologies, they are decisions waiting to be made. Each breakthrough asks the same question in a different form. Will we use this to grow together or to fall apart? Maybe the reason we hear no other voices in the dark is because most civilizations choose poorly. Some expand too far, collapsing under their own weight. Others turn inward, strangled by fear or division. A few perhaps find the narrow path between the two, and those few become invisible to us, transcending the need to call out into the void. The Great Filter may not be an external barrier at all, but a moment of self-awareness, a fork in the road where a species decides what kind of future it deserves. And if that's true, then the universe is watching not with hostility, but with patience, waiting to see which choice we make. Do we continue to grow, guided by compassion and restraint, learning to thrive without consuming everything in our path? Or do we turn inward, lost in the noise of our own brilliance, until our lights flicker out? Perhaps this is the true test written in the stars, the moment when a civilization becomes the author of its own destiny, not by surviving chance, but by choosing wisdom. Because in the end, the Great Filter may not destroy those who fail to pass it. They may simply stop choosing. And in that stillness, they vanish. Not with an explosion, but with a whisper. When we look at Earth from space, we see no borders, no conflicts, just one fragile world. Perhaps passing the Great Filter begins with that realization that survival means seeing ourselves as one. It's remarkable how distance changes everything. From the surface, humanity appears divided by nations, languages, beliefs, and histories written in opposition. But from orbit, all those divisions vanish. The Earth becomes a single shimmering marble suspended in darkness, wrapped in a thin veil of atmosphere that protects everything we've ever known. From space, there are no sides, only life. Astronauts often describe a shift in awareness when they first see our planet from above. They call it the overview effect, a sudden, overwhelming understanding that the boundaries we fight over are illusions, that we are all part of the same fragile ecosystem, sharing the same air, water, and destiny. It's the ultimate change of perspective, from separation to unity, from survival of the fittest to survival of the whole. Perhaps this change in perspective isn't just emotional, it's evolutionary. Maybe every intelligent species must reach this realization before it can survive long enough to join the cosmic community. Before it learns to travel the stars, it must first learn to live at peace on its own world. To see itself not as billions of competing individuals, but as one organism, a planetary consciousness, learning to understand itself. If that's true, then maybe the Great Filter is a mirror, not a wall. It reflects our mindset, testing whether we can think beyond our own tribes, beyond our moment in time. Because until we see ourselves as one, every advance in technology only multiplies our divisions. A united species builds worlds, a divided one destroys them. From space, Earth looks timeless yet fragile. Every war, every triumph, every moment of love or loss happens within that tiny shell of life. And yet, how easily we forget how small it is. Perhaps the universe is quiet because few ever reach this awareness. To recognize oneself not as the center of creation, but as part of something infinitely larger. To understand that we are the cosmos, briefly conscious of itself, capable of choice. When that awareness takes hold, competition gives way to cooperation. Fear gives way to stewardship. A species learns not only to survive but to care. And in doing so, it steps beyond the ancient instinct that once kept it alive into a higher state that allows it to endure. Maybe this is what every surviving civilization learns in time, that survival isn't about domination, but perspective. To see the self in all things, and all things in the self, the great filter, then, may not be about reaching the stars, it may be about deserving to. Because when a species finally learns to look back on its world and see not a planet, but a home, only then is it ready to venture into the vastness beyond it. We are now the anomaly, the civilization that listens and dares to speak back. Every signal we send is both a question and a confession. We made it this far. But for how long? Every day, Earth hums softly with the noise of humanity. From the first crackling transmissions of Morse code to the steady pulse of digital communication, we've filled the sky with whispers, radio waves, television signals, bursts of radar, fragments of music, and the heartbeat of our technology. To us, they're ordinary. To the universe, they're a declaration. We exist. We are the first known species on our world to bridge the silence, to look into the infinite and try to speak. Each signal that leaves our planet carries a fragment of who we are. Our mathematics, our art, our voices, our mistakes. In that invisible radiation, drifting outward at the speed of light, our collective identity travels with it. Proof that one small world once thought to ask if it was alone. But every message is also a mirror. When we transmit, we reveal not only our intelligence but our vulnerability. We announce ourselves to the void with open hands, not knowing who or what might listen. Maybe that is the truest measure of our nature, a willingness to reach outward even when we know the risk. To hope, even when the odds say we shouldn't. The signals we've sent, Arecibo, Voyager's golden record, the messages etched into distant spacecraft, are both science and poetry. They are humanity's love letters to the unknown, filled with the optimism that defines us. A simple binary pulse can carry more than data, it carries intent. It says, we are curious and we are kind enough to try. And yet, woven into that hope is an undertone of fear. We are the anomaly, yes, but for how long? Will someone, someday, listen to our echoes and wonder what happened to us? Will our signals continue to drift through the void long after we are gone, as faint ghosts of a world that once reached beyond itself? Perhaps that's what the great filter sounds like, not a scream, but a fading transmission, a pulse of meaning traveling endlessly through space, outliving the civilization that made it. Maybe, scattered across the galaxy, countless such signals already exist, each one the obituary of a species that dared to dream. Our own signals are joining them now, wave by wave, century by century. In 10,000 years, the first radio broadcasts will still be travelling outward, carrying laughter, music, and the static of human noise. Even if no one ever hears them, they will remain, our fingerprints on the fabric of the cosmos. To send them is to defy the silence. It's our way of saying, we were here, we saw the stars, and we tried to understand. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the act of reaching out, the choice to speak into the infinite, is what makes us different. What defines us? Because in the end, The signal we send is not just data, it's us. Every question, every fear, every dream condensed into light, racing through the dark, asking one simple, eternal thing. If the Great Filter is real, then every civilization must face the same moment we do now, the awareness of its own fragility. Yet in that silence lies something profound, the proof that we were here, that we wondered, and that for a brief time, the universe knew itself. There comes a moment for every world when its skies fall silent. When the last transmission fades, the last city dims, and the last being to look at the stars realizes how small and temporary even brilliance can be. Perhaps that moment is the Great Filter's final truth, not destruction, but acceptance. The recognition that every civilization, no matter how vast or wise, is bound by the same law of impermanence that governs the stars themselves. But within that truth lies something beautiful. For a heartbeat in eternity, we existed. We built. We loved. We asked impossible questions. We turned matter into thought, chaos into meaning. We became a way for the cosmos to see itself, to contemplate its own mystery through our eyes. Maybe that's what the universe has been waiting for all along, not endless empires or immortal machines, but awareness. A spark of consciousness bright enough to reflect its own origin. Every civilization that reaches this point, standing at the edge of the Great Filter, becomes that mirror. However briefly they complete the circle, the universe looking inward, through itself, and whispering, "I am here." And even when that spark fades, as it must, it does not vanish entirely. The atoms that once thought, once loved, once built telescopes to study the sky, scatter back into the stars. They become the dust of new worlds, the seeds of new beginnings. Perhaps the cycle continues endlessly, each generation of matter rising into new forms of awareness, remembering faintly the dream that came before. The silence between stars, then, may not be tragedy at all. It may be reverence. A stillness so complete it allows the echoes of every vanished world to resonate softly, eternally. The universe is quiet not because it has nothing to say, but because it remembers. Every photon that ever left a living world still travels outward, carrying the faint imprint of all who once were. When the stars go quiet, their silence is not empty. And one day, far from now, when even our own sun has burned its last, our legacy will still be out there, rippling across the dark, woven into the background hum of creation. Perhaps the Great Filter is not the end of the story, but the closing of a chapter, a reminder that everything beautiful is temporary, and that temporariness is what makes it sacred. We are fragile, we are fleeting. But for this moment, this astonishing, improbable moment, we are here. A single spark in the dark, bright enough to wonder why the stars are so quiet, and brave enough to listen anyway. And so, we return to silence. The same silence that greeted us before the first question was ever asked. The stars still burn, distant and patient, as they always have. And somewhere between their light and our thoughts lies the story of everything, of beginnings, of endings, of brief sparks that called themselves alive. Perhaps the Great Filter is not a barrier to fear, but a mirror to understand. It reminds us that survival is not only about power, but perspective. That the rarest thing in the universe is not intelligence, but kindness. Not life itself, but the ability to cherish it. We may never know if others made it through, or if we are the only ones still awake beneath this endless sky. But we can choose what our silence means. We can make it a silence of awe, of peace, of gratitude for the fragile chance to exist at all. So tonight, as the world turns quietly below you, remember this. You are part of something vast and ancient, a story still being written in the language of stars. Rest now, traveller. The universe will keep your place in its memory. The light of our brief moment will continue outward, soft, eternal, and enough. Good night.